We are excited to be back in Sebring. We don't have Chamber of Commerce weather this morning, but I think it's going to get a little bit better throughout the day. And we've got a lot of great awards that we are going to be awarding, not just for folks here in Highlands County, but really throughout the heartland of Florida and throughout primarily our rural communities. I'm joined here by our Secretary of Commerce, Alex Kelly, and your local representative, Kaylee Tuck. And so I want to thank her for what she's done for rural Florida. We've got a lot of stuff to announce, but first I'll just say, the state of Florida, we had a report yesterday by our bond finance department. So if you look at the state of Florida's debt that we've had over our entire 180-year history, just since I've been governor, we've retired half of that in a 6+ year period. And we did a few years ago, we put in a program to do accelerated debt repayment. So we were able to put money up front, and these guys would buy the bonds at a discount. They do all these things. That saves you from having to pay interest on that going forward. Also, it saves you on the principal the way they did it. And so just by doing that, not only is the debt, you pay down the debt, we now have the lowest per capita debt in the country, but you've saved almost $2 billion between principal and interest to be able to do it. There's not a lot of states that are able to do that. I mean, you see California running massive deficits. You see New York. In fact, they said our debt per person in Florida is about $430. New York City, that has 8 million people, we have 23+ million, their debt is $100 and some billion. And it's like 15 grand a pop just to be able to pay off that debt. And it's going to probably get worse if this new mayor, tries to take over the grocery stores, because they're going to lose money doing that. It doesn't work. So that's been a very successful program. We're going to continue to do it. I put it in my budget going forward again, going forward. But, it's like you see these fiscal, this stuff, you can do it. You just got to make good decisions, and you got to make good choices. So we were able to, continue the momentum there, which is really, really good. The other thing that we're now able to do is, part of it, we didn't have a hurricane, which is good. But, a couple years ago, we did all this big overhaul to try to bring some sanity to Florida's insurance market. It's like, on one hand, we got a peninsula in the middle of tropical weather. We have higher risks than other places. That's just a reality. And then the same with auto insurance. Our drivers here, it's just tough, right? Because you got a mix of demographics out there. You got grandma driving, then you got some young people. So it's tough. But we had some problems in the market, and so the legislature, at the end of 22, beginning of 23, did a bunch of reforms. And I said at the time, I was like, this is not going to happen overnight. Well, now we're in a situation where Progressive, one of the biggest auto insurers, they're sending out $1 billion in rebates to their policyholders because the costs have been lower than what they had forecast because of our reforms, largely avoiding frivolous litigation, which is very costly. And, so it's like, why would you want a system where, you do this lengthy litigation, you get a $500,000 award, and the lawyer gets $450,000, and the person gets $50 grand. I mean, it was crazy, some of the stuff that was going on. So they did that. State Farm reduced rates 10%. And I think you're gonna see it. These other companies are gonna either reduce or have to do the rebates to consumers. And that's not only, obviously that's good, but in all these other states, it's still going up pretty sharply. This has been a very tough issue nationwide. So you have that. And then homeowners, you had reinsurance, which just came in. We were at the conference with a big decline, and largely attributed to the market reforms in Florida. That impacts what the carriers charge. And then you had Peninsula, which is one of our biggest ones, announced, I think, an 8% reduction. I think State Farm announced a reduction. Or no, AAA announced a reduction. So you're going to see more and more of that, especially not having had a storm. But Citizens insurance, after the hurricanes of 04 and 05, basically you had market was in turmoil. The governor at the time, said that, tried to control the rates, so companies left. Like, that's just what happens, right? It's like economics 101. And so you had a period of time where you had like rinky-dink companies. Then when we got hit by Irma and Michael, a lot of those companies, went out. So, we were in a situation, having inherited that, say, okay, what are you going to do? You obviously need to have, strong. But what was happening was a lot of those people were going on to Citizens Insurance, which is the insurer of last resort, which basically, Floridians would have to backstop if you had a real catastrophic situation. So the number of people on that got up to 1.4 million folks. The problem with that is that if you did have a storm, they weren't solvent to be able to pay the claims, and guess what they would have done? They would have picked your pocket to be able to pay those claims and actually have the authority to assess any policy in Florida. So you could have renter's insurance in Sebring and Citizens could assess you to pay their deficit. You could have your car insurance policy. They could assess that. You could have homeowners with someone else. They could assess that. So that obviously people would be furious if that ever happened. So that was in a precarious spot. Now because the market reforms, more companies are coming in, more options, you end up having go from 1.4 million down to about 300,000 people. Now what that's going to end up doing is gives an opportunity to even reduce those rates in Citizens. And so our insurance commissioner is looking at their thing. But, I'm looking at it like this is a little bit different than a private company. Like you have your business, you obviously have to make judgments and you compete in the marketplace. With Citizens, it's kind of insurer last resort. So I said, well, we need to be, as strong as possible to be able to give relief. And I don't think if you're a primary homeowner, you should get more relief than somebody like a Canadian who's doing this or somebody that's renting it out. So they're working on that, but I think you're going to be able to see some pretty good reductions there, with Citizens. And honestly, it's like, people need to be able to afford to be able to raise families. We've been very good on tax because we don't really have, at this point, I don't even know from the state level that we have a lot of taxes we could really cut. We don't have an income tax, thank God. We've made almost all the essentials exempt from sales tax. Groceries, medications, all baby items are exempt from sales tax now in Florida. Diapers, wipes, cribs, strollers, all those other things. We didn't enact that until my youngest was out of diapers, and so we could have saved a lot of money in our family. We'd done it earlier, but we didn't have Biden inflation then, so we did that. Disaster preparedness, that holiday's permanent. Back to school tax is permanent. We're currently, till the end of the year, have our Second Amendment tax holiday. No tax on ammunition and firearms, accoutrements, fishing supplies, camping supplies, which is great. And I think we're going to re-up that. We got rid of the business rent tax, totally eliminated, a tax. Like these other places always find ways to milk you more. We're actually eliminating tax because we have the ability to do it. So we're looking, okay, from the state perspective, we are probably the lowest tax state per capita in the country, certainly in the top 2 or 3, right? I mean, no question. Yeah. But, we have this issue that if you ask people, what's tax, put aside the federal government, how's the tax? The number one thing over and over is property tax, which is a local tax. It's not something that we do in Tallahassee. And what's happened is in 2019, local governments in Florida combined took in $32 billion in property tax revenue. Today, they're taking in $56 billion. Well, where's that coming from? Well, some of them are new homes. Some of it new people move. That's true. But a lot of it is people have homes that they bought for $250,000 10 years ago. Now they're being told it's worth $750,000. In some parts of Florida, homes that were really, some of them are $1 million when you would have, if we were talking about this 10 years ago, you'd have laughed at that. So they're being assessed like that, so people are having to pay more. Even if they have a limitation with homestead, it still goes up, and heaven forbid you buy a home in the last few years, well, you're at a much higher tax basis than that. And so, people say like, oh, you can't do anything about this, like all this other stuff. Why go from 32 to 56? I mean, think about it. We've had population growth, we've had inflation. Account for all of that. It still wouldn't put you at 56, right? So this has been a gusher of revenue that's been going in. And look, some counties and cities have done better than others, but some They've already documented with Blaze and Golia $300+ million of overspending in Miami-Dade, $200 million overspending in Orange County, even like Manatee County on the west coast of Florida, overspending. And so, it's like my view is obviously we all want to do the basic things that are important. You have your police, your fire, the education and all that. But do you want to keep spending, having to pay tax to do spending over and above that at really record levels? I think most people would rather have the tax relief from property tax. And so we're working with folks in the legislature to craft, and it's got to go on the ballot. So we're working on crafting something that's going to be really transformative, that's going to be really positive for homeowners. And really, look, I'm focused on Florida residents. If you're a Canadian, tax them. I don't care, right? If you have a home, if you own 10 Airbnbs, tax it. That's fine. But I'm saying your personal residence that you have as your primary. I don't think the government should be able to take that away from you because you didn't pay tax, 1 year. And so that's the vision. So we're working on that. The details matter. We don't want to create perverse incentives. We want to make sure it's something that people rally about. But in my budget, because there's some of the rural counties like, oh, no, we can't do it. We can't. First of all, I think you can do it. But I put in my budget 100% reimbursement for rural counties, including Highlands. So 32 fiscally constrained counties. And honestly, it's like budget dust for us. For Homestead, I think it's $280 million to do every single one of those counties where they wouldn't be held harmless. Now, the reality is there's fiscally constrained counties that have increased budgets too, and I think the reality is taxpayers, want to see. In Florida, it's interesting. If you go pre-COVID, we were in the between 90 and 100 billion, but we've spent money for COVID. You had inflation, population growth. But if you look at the last 4 years, we basically have the same budget. I mean, it's all within like a few $1 billion. It's between like 115, 120 billion, and that's been pretty consistent now for 4 years. That number for our state budget is less than half of New York's budget. And we have millions of more people than New York does. In fact, that budget's less than New York City's budget alone. They have 8 million people. So I think you can do it, and I think it's just, do you want to, maintain stable, or do you want to build in this? Because here's the thing. You can't go from 32 billion in 2019 to 56 billion in 2025 and that be sustainable, those types of increases. It just doesn't happen. And the last thing I want to see is somebody, not be able to afford a home for their family because they can't afford to pay the tax, or elderly that have to sell the home because they can't afford the tax. So we have an opportunity to do something about it. I think it'll be really, really positive. I don't want to do something and then cause people to move here to take advantage of this. So we're going to make sure to protect again. I want my people right now who are here, who are residents, to get relief. That's what I'm looking to do. And we don't want people to game the system. We obviously don't want to do it that's going to cause these prices, to go up. Now, I do think you're seeing reduction in home prices, and that's definitely starting to trickle throughout the whole economy. Florida, we were the first to shoot up Texas, and then I think we're probably the first that are going to get, it's like people say housing's too expensive, and then then if it corrects, they say, oh, well, the housing market's getting rocked. It's like, we can't referee. Markets go up and down, right? The reality is when there's a correction, that gives buyers more opportunity to be able to afford. I don't think buyers are going to pay COVID prices for homes right now. I don't think that, especially at these interest rates. That's just not going to happen. A lot of sellers are having to just take their homes off the market because it sits there. You go back to 2021, people would put a home on the market, like Sarasota, it'd be gone in 24 hours, right? Just boom, 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 it was happening, and you saw a big run up. I think that that euphoria has cooled, and we're now in a little bit different era, but that gives opportunities for some. Now, some who bought at the peak, they have financial problems, they may be underwater, it's not fun. So there's all these different things, but I do see that that's happening. Now, we are, 3 years in a row, we've been ranked #1 economy by both CNBC and U.S. News and World Report. And, I think people have recognized that Florida is a really great engine in a lot of different ways. We've always had agriculture. We've had tourism, most of our history. very strong in space, commercial space, very strong in defense, now very strong in finance and investments, and also in manufacturing. I mean, we had tens of thousands of manufacturing jobs created in Florida since I've been governor. We put an emphasis on trade schools and our state colleges, and even getting things, apprenticeships and certifications in high schools, and that's something that's really important. You know, we're also, and I did a roundtable on this, I guess I did it on Monday, about the need to have a Bill of Rights for Floridians against artificial intelligence. You do have this strain of thinking where people are saying that they're going to create super intelligence that's going to displace human beings from being able to control our own destiny. I reject that. God endowed human beings with unalienable rights. He did not endow machines with certain unalienable rights. And so you can use technologies to enhance our experience as Americans, but I'm not going to sit here and allow technologies to supplant us from controlling our own destiny. We can never be relieved of our responsibility to think for ourselves. We have to protect our children. You know, these children have these chat bots, and these are very, very devious things. We had mothers who were testifying, and one of the moms had a son, and basically the chatbot was trying to turn the son against the parents, and basically said, you know, you need to call the police on him, and even suggested that the kid kill his parents. And I'm thinking to myself, what the hell is going on here? Yet another mom whose son was being sexually groomed by an AI character chatbot, and then eventually was goaded into committing suicide. You know, some people say, well, the parents should just not let them have it. It's tough as a parent. These things are everywhere, right? I mean, so you got to have some safeguards, and you got to have a structure, but we have every right to make sure that technologies are harnessed in a way that benefits the public and benefits us as Floridians and as Americans. And especially on the eve of America's 250th anniversary, we want to make sure that policy is reinforcing the founding principles of this country. And so our AI Bill of Rights, I think, is something that's really leading the nation. You know, we're going to be working with the legislature on it, but there's a lot of perils out there with this. And by all means, do not subsidize this stuff. If it's viable, then you should be able to stand on your 2 feet. You know, you hear like some of these companies, oh, we want a federal backstop. Honestly, they want a bailout if it doesn't work out well, because they're trying to build data centers or do this, but the communities don't want the data centers. So, you know, even Palm Beach took it down 7-0 because it takes a lot of power. One of these hyperscale centers is like a city of 500,000 people just sucking off the electric grid. And so you think to yourself, like, is that, as just a residential consumer, is that going to be good for you or not? And I think most people are like, no, that's not good. And, you know, it doesn't even employ a lot of people once the data center gets built. And I think a lot of them, they bring in on like H-1B visas and stuff. I mean, so it's not like they're going to be hiring, ain't going to be hiring people in Highlands County to run their data centers, they try to put. So we want, as part of the AI Bill of Rights, protection against that. No passing off costs to consumers, no taking water, none of that stuff, because ultimately, you know, we want our communities to thrive. So there's a whole host of issues with that. You're going to see more and more of this, you know, going on. You know, our students, one of the best things we did in Florida was ban cell phones in the classroom. And students have learned better. But, you know, what they're going to try to start doing with this AI is just have AI do all the schoolwork. Well, what's the purpose of, why even send them then if they're just going to have a machine do everything? So there's a lot that we have to grapple with, both as parents, in terms of students, in terms of our kids, but also in terms of what it's going to do to the economy. You know, they were telling all these kids, oh, you got to learn coding, you got to do all this. I never said that, but people were saying that. And now it's like the AI could do all the coding. So these guys they're not getting jobs. And then even the jobs that are available for humans, they're bringing in foreigners on visas to do these because the tech companies can pay them less. So there's a whole host of issues with the economy that we're going to have to deal with this. So we're leading on this. I think we're being very common sense about it. I think we're making sure that everything we do, we got to put the people of the state first. It's not put a handful of companies that are in California first. It's not try to act like, some type of fake, fake videos or fake songs are going to deliver us to some kind of utopia. That is not going to happen. And there's massive possibilities, of abuse of all this stuff. Some of these videos, it's like, it's mindless. Honestly, it's slop. Oh, I can take, it's like my son. They played it. Some of us they played a joke. He's a Florida State fan, so they did an AI where he's in a Gator shirt. He got very mad at that, right? He's in second grade, and so yeah, you can do that. Haha, it's funny, but it's like, is that really the sum total of kind of what we're looking to do, in our society? So I think that's going to be really, really significant. The one thing I'll say on our economy is, as governor, I was the first governor to do public events in all 67 counties. I'd ask my staff, I was like, have they ever did? Because, I was at one of the rural counties, and I had a woman come up to me, and she just grabbed me by the cheek. She's like, I just want to make sure you're real. I've never seen a governor before, and they do this. And I was showing up all these places, but I was bringing checks, and I was doing stuff. And they said they hadn't found anyone that had done all 67. Now, obviously, you go back far enough in time, it was very hard to traverse this state. I have the ability to get in, on air, so it's a little easier. But we were able to do it. And we've done more for rural Florida than I'd say any governor has ever done in terms of the investments. So, and it's important. And so it's just because, well, first of all, I don't want the whole state, like you can go down to different parts. There's a lot of flavors in Florida, but, Miami is not for everybody, right? There's certain areas, but having kind of the old Florida, I think is important for our culture. I think it's important for our economy. And ultimately, I think it's something that we have to preserve. And there's a lot of potential to do a lot of great things, and we're seeing a lot of great things, and we're going to see a lot more. So we've got a lot of money that we're going to be able to give out today. So first and foremost, I want to say we're going to award $3 million to the Sebring Airport Authority to demolish and replace the existing stormwater system and associated infrastructure at the Sebring Regional Airport and Multimodal Logistics Center. And I know people have been asking for that, so your wish is my command. We've been able to do that. We're also awarding $22 million to the City of Avon Park to assess, evaluate, repair, and potentially rebuild the facilities at the City of Avon Park sanitary sewer collection system. And I know people have been asking for that for a long time, so we delivered on that. Other awards that we're doing. So today, the total of this for all across Florida is $311 million on really important projects. So we have our program in terms of rebuild and repairing Florida. Some of this is, when we had the storm in 2023, Idalia, Congress didn't do anything. And then we had the storms in 24, and then finally at the end of the year, they finally passed. And so by the time they get it, once we got the ability to do it, you have to solicit input, people can apply and all that, and then that's where we go. But we're able to do almost $6 million to the Bradford County Commission to reinforce the roadway by adding base pavement and reestablish the roadside swales for erosion protection. $16.4 million to the Citrus County for replacement of sanitary sewer system. They had 23 and 24 storms. I've done a lot for Citrus County. Let me tell you, we've put a lot of money. It's a great spot. We're happy to do that. City of Arcadia, $14.2 million to widen the main stormwater channel in the city. $8.5 million to construct and expand the wastewater treatment plant. Live Oak in North Florida, $3.9 million to construct a 100,000-gallon water storage tank and support a water line loop project. $7 million to the city of McClenny in North Florida to harden and modernize the Ohio Street water treatment plant. $4.9 million to the city of Palatka in Northeast Florida to harden and expand the capacity of the city's wastewater treatment plant. $2.4 million, City of Wauchula it helps to have the president of the Florida Senate be from Wauchula and Hardee County, Ben Albrecht. He's a good guy. To support wastewater system repairs, rehabilitation, and floodwater. Columbia County, $4 million, upgrade and harden shelters in Columbia County. $8 million, DeSoto County, construct and install wells and a pumping system to connect the wastewater treatment plant to the disposal wells. Do you have DeSoto in your district? Who's that? Okay. 1.9 million to Hardee County to remove vegetative debris from the Peace River waterway system. $20 million to Jacksonville Electric Authority to redirect wastewater flows to JEA's existing reliable wastewater treatment facility. $2.7 million to Okeechobee County Board of Commissioners. Do you have that? Yeah. To rehabilitate, preserve, and harden 5 critical county-owned bridges. $70 million to repair water infrastructure in the Peace River watershed. That's going to be really, really big. $6 million for Santa Fe College up in Alachua County. $38 million in Suwannee County for an emergency special needs shelter. You know, when we do these hurricanes, we have special needs because people have special needs. We make sure there's pets, that you can bring pets to shelter. You know, you don't want to leave your dogs in the house when you're evacuating, so you bring pets. So we have all that covered, but this is important for Suwannee to be able to have a special needs shelter. 1.4 million, Glen St. Mary for wastewater collection system hardening. St. Lucie Village, $12 million for potable water supply system for the town's public use. Union County, Northern Florida, $1.4 million, harden public safety communications tower. The village of Indiantown in Martin County, $9.3 million for a reverse osmosis water treatment plant, and $7.9 million to replace 13,000 linear feet of the main water transmission main for the village. We've done a lot for Indiantown since I've been governor. $10.8 million Immokalee Water and Sewer District for wastewater treatment plant improvements. Town of Dundee, $6 million for sanitary sewer collection system hardening, and $10 million to repair damage and repair the potable water system for the town. So these are major, major awards. We're also going to award $13.5 million in 11 small rural infrastructure grant awards to assist with other critical infrastructure projects. So Frostproof, $240,000. Lake City in North Florida, $1.7 million. Okeechobee, $1.2 million. $500,000 to Wauchula, $2 million to Columbia County, $250,000 to Hardee County, $226,000 to Hardee Industrial Development Authority, $2.9 million to Keystone Heights Airport Authority up in Northeast Florida, $1 million to the Okeechobee Utility Authority, $3 million to Putnam County for public infrastructure at the Central Landfill, $300,000 to the town of Zolfo Springs for sanitary sewer evaluation survey. So, you know, this is some of this stuff honestly isn't sexy, but it's important, right, for these communities. And so I want to thank Alex Kelly at the Florida Department of Commerce for soliciting the input and helping prepare this list of really meaningful awards. And at the end of the day, you know, we want awards that are gonna make a difference. And what I tell people in the past is, you know, honestly, I could bring like, you know, $1 million to a rural, they'll be so happy. I bring like 20 million to Miami and it's like not a big deal, right? So, you know, the money goes farther in some of the rural, and so we're happy to be able to be a champion for rural Florida. So come on up, Alex.
Well, Governor, thank you, and thank all of you. Thank you, Governor, for really, you constantly remind us and direct us to stay focused. When we think about these awards, we think about these projects, think about partnering with so many of you in the room. constantly remain focused on workforce readiness and infrastructure readiness. Create those conditions where a community, people, families can really, at that point, craft their way forward, craft their vision. Governor, you gave a great description of these projects. I just want to maybe highlight a couple things. First off, it's great to be here at the Sebring Airport again. This is an incredible airport. The team here, you have a vision here that's really unique and really, I think, showing the way forward for what an intermodal logistics center can look like, an inland port concept can look like, and it's truly one of, I think, the most innovative gems in the state right here, and it's great to work with the team here. You know, I think about some of these projects. I think about, Jennifer, I think about the Columbia County project. You know, you've got one of the most incredible industrial sites developed in the state of Florida. You're enhancing that further with one of these grants. It's really an incredible opportunity for that region to attract major industry. Thinking about, Governor, you mentioned some of the projects in Suwannee County and at Santa Fe College. These are projects that these communities have come forward and in partnership with state emergency responders and local communities in terms of emergency preparation, response, and recovery. These are hubs, these are visions they have for really serving an entire region in a catalytic way. You know, think about the Keystone Heights Airport, which is such a unique thing. I don't know where General Eifert, you're a general. You know, they share an adjacent fence line with Camp Blanding, and it's a unique airport, partly in Clay County, partly in Bradford County, and it's a unique hub of potential opportunity for economic development, but also even national security related initiatives. And so some of these projects have really deliberate focus, job creation, the security of the communities, ultimately the resiliency of the communities. It's been great to work with so many of you. And Governor, just thank you for your constant direction and leadership on these projects. And I think we're going to deliver some great results with these. So thank you so much, Governor, and thank all of you for your partnership with these projects.
We're excited about this, and obviously we're going to do more. You know, we put more rural infrastructure in my budget, and then I also have something called the Florida Job Growth Grant Fund, which again, communities can apply for. We evaluate, you know, we try to have maximum impact, and you know, it's like there's a lot of big state, there's a lot of going on. You know, sometimes you stand out or not. You know, I know there was one it was out Ocala. So if you guys have ever gone on I-75, kind of through by that part of Florida around Ocala, you know, there's traffic and stuff or whatever. So they wanted to do an off-ramp in one of the parts of I-75. I'm like, yeah, you know, if you do an off-ramp, you know, if we think this industrial site will bloom and this and that, all this stuff. I'm like, yeah, you know, so, because I got a lot of other stuff, right, too. And then they're going, and maybe this, and I was like, all right. And then they were like, well, and then also if we do it, they're going to put a Buc-ee's there. And I'm like, all right, I'll do it. And I sat there. So the Buc-ee's in Ocala, is that opening in this 2026? Okay, so that'll be our third Buc-ee's. So have any of you been to Buc-ee's before? You know, there's two in there's Daytona Beach and St. Augustine right now in Florida. They're doing Ocala, and then they're going to do one in Tallahassee, right off I-10, which that is going to do very well because, you know, people coming across the state. But you know, it's like, you know, you look at like an old Citgo station where there's like nothing there, and then you look at Buc-ee's, you know, it's like Shangri-La for a gas station. I mean, like, and the bathrooms are clean. They make barbecue. They've got like sandwiches, a baker. I mean, you name it. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And so we're going to do that. And it's like, oh, look, I mean, I know people like to have those stops. Nobody has been to more gas stations in this state than me. Because we, you know, between campaigning and governing and doing all this stuff, I've been able to watch all these new ones sprout. You know, there was I think when I first ran for governor, I mean, we had some Wawa. Now they're everywhere. I mean, all over the place. We didn't have Buc-ee's. Now we have two, about to have three, and probably by 27 we'll have the fourth one. So it's good. But bottom line is job growth grant. We want to make an impact. We want to see something good. And, you know, another thing that we've done is our Moving Florida Forward project. So, you know, we have massive surplus. And, you know, it's like, I don't want to we do all the taxes, I said, where we've done all that. And that's been great. And we paid down debt, you know, which is great. But it's just like, I've got these road projects that need to be done now that we're not even scheduled to start until like the 2030s. And I'm like, well, what good does that do to just sit in traffic for that long? And there's different parts of the state where it's more acute. And so we took a bunch of money, leveraged it, and then did an infusion. And so now those projects are going to be delivered to the consumer 5, 10, or even 15 years ahead of initial schedule. And so that's a huge thing. And it was money we're going to have to spend anyways. And honestly, in 10 years, it probably cost a hell of a lot more to do it anyway. So it was good use of that. But that's making a really, really big difference. And our transportation budget is very strong this year going forward as well. You know, I tell people some of the investments we've made, you know, we've done a lot on environmental restoration, Everglades, all this stuff. We've built reservoirs, and we've put a lot of resources into it. But once you reach where you have the infrastructure, water flows properly, you don't have to spend as much in the future. So it's like 5 years from now, you probably spend half as much as we're spending on some of that because we will have built everything that needs to be done. So that's even better for the budget outlook going forward. You know, the other thing is on higher education. We have the lowest tuition in our university system in the United States by a long shot. So it's for in-state, it's about $6,300 for tuition, and we have the #1 ranked public university system in the world, or in the country. Not necessarily football anymore. You know, Miami's not part of our university system, but at least a Florida team made the playoffs. So I'm rooting for Miami against Texas A&M on Saturday. Do we have any Hurricane fans? We do? Okay, we got a couple. Yeah, as we go further south. You know, it's interesting. You know, probably like once you go west of Jacksonville through the Panhandle, Florida State, right? Most of like from Jacksonville into Orlando and down that way is mostly Florida. I mean, I'd say they're the most. And then Miami is really like Miami, Fort Lauderdale. Even once you get beyond that, it's not as prevalent. It's kind of hit or miss. But we're hoping that they're going to be able, you know, to do well. You know, I think about this college football is a total mess. The transfer portal and the money, and it's like, look, I signed an NIL bill very early. I think we were the first state to do it because my view is just simply, you know, if they're selling your jersey with your name on it, how do you say you don't get anything from that? And so I don't think the athletes were treated fairly then. But what's happened in our bill when we did it was the first, we had to go down and liberalize even more because everyone else kind of blew this, so we just had to keep up with everybody. But now it's like they have more rights than pro athletes. So they'll go in, you know, quarterback will, you know, throw for 4 touchdowns. The third game of the season, go, hey, coach, I need more NIL money. Well, I'm going to hit the transfer portal. And then you just go hop around schools. So you can play for 4 or 5 schools the way it goes now. And you can even play a few games, do very well, sit out, and still get eligibility for the next year. And so it's like that's not, I think, and it's hard to even know whether your teams are going to be good year after year because you don't know who you're going to lose. And then to do the transfer portal right as we're getting into the playoff, how does that make sense where these teams are going to have to make the decision? So, you know, I talked to some of the governors about a year or so ago, and even the Democrats. I think everyone wanted to kind of come up with a framework. And honestly, you really only need 10, 12 states, right? Because, you know, if you get Florida, Texas, Georgia, Alabama, Michigan, now you need Indiana, California, you know, there's a handful of others, you know, that have really big time programs. You could do it, but then when President Trump got elected, like, well, we're going to do something with it. So we're like, all right, we'll let the feds do it. But I know they're working on something, but I think this is really, I think it's hit rock bottom, and just in terms of all the static that's in the system, and then not knowing whether they actually have to have general managers now for college football because it basically is, you know, like a professional thing. And so somewhere it's like, you know, they make all this money off you and you got nothing in the past, to now it's like, you know, just a total, maybe there's a happy medium where, you know, if you're using somebody's image, if they're making money for you, you know, they get to share in that. But the notion that this should be, you know, the major thing where they're constantly doing, and it's interesting, some of the people that have gotten big NIL deals haven't even really produced that well, you know, going forward. And so it's kind of a crapshoot with that as well. But anyways, I'm going to be rooting for Miami. I was very vocal that they should get into the playoff. You know, because, you know, I thought Notre Dame should get in too, but like if it's between Miami, Notre Dame, and Miami beat them, then you kind of got to give them the tiebreaker. So we'll see how it goes. But it's been great being here. Thank everybody. I hope you guys, I know we've got representatives from a lot of the different communities around Florida who's going to be getting this money. You know, normally we bring the big ceremonial checks, but we had too many checks to hand out today, and we weren't going to be able to print all that this soon. So, so just if you want a ceremonial check, you know, maybe my staff can work and we can get it out there to do it. Nobody has yet, you know, tried to go to Truist or one of these banks and actually cash those checks. But you know, you never know what happens. There's a lot of funny money out there. Thanks, everybody.